that basically, pag tinanggal niyo yan ng 25 to 45% of the budget, depends on what year, basically what you're saying is tinatanggalan niyo ng capital expenditures. For physical infrastructure and for social infrastructure. Wala na yun. Basically, what you have is a budget that goes mainly to maintenance of operations and to salaries of government officials. Now, the problem here is that the government is the biggest investor in any country. The biggest. In any country, the biggest investor is the government. Therefore, one must say that government is the biggest factor in terms of stimulating dynamic growth. And what we have done essentially for the last 30 years is eliminated the dynamism of government as an investor. And again, this is the reason, I think the prime reason, why our growth rate for so long, we were basically the so-called sick man of Asia. And why were the others moving ahead? The others were moving ahead because they were not following the IMF prescriptions. They were saying no to structural adjustment. They basically paid their debts, but according to their terms. And they succeeded. Now, what is very interesting is that many of these technocrats around us in Southeast Asia, in order to fool the IMF and the World Bank, ang rhetoric lagi nila, free market, free market, free market. Okay? We are going to be able to deregulate, privatize, etc., and let market forces work. But they practice a different political economy. A political economy that protected, a political economy that put government at the center of the investment push. The problem with our technocrats is that they preach market reform and they practice market reform. They preach neoliberal economics of get the state out of everything, and they practice what they preach. So itong problema, it does not always pay to practice what you preach. This is the reality. The other Asian countries, technocrats were smart. They said, okay, we'll preach free market, but we'll protect. Tayo, iba. During the Ramos administration, okay, one of the noted economists of UPLB, hindi ko na sasabihin ng pangalan, pero katunggali ko siya, sinabi, pucha, kaya natin ito. If the Chileans can bring down their tariff rates to 11% across the board, why can't we? 4 to 6%. Kaya natin to. They brought down the tariff rates to 4 to 6%. What happened was the deindustrialization of Philippine industry. We had 200 textile and garment firms in 40 years ago. We now are lucky to have about 20. Kausap ko lang si Mayor Del Guzman of Marikina. Marikina, when I was growing up, was the center of a dynamic shoe industry. Because of these neoliberal policies of bringing down tariffs, allowing imports to flood in, the firms in Marikina, both supplier firms and actual firms, fell from 2,000 to about 200 at present. So this is the story of our agriculture and our industry, and this is the story of structural adjustment and the priority that was put on debt repayment. So my point is, we have the resources, they're just being misallocated. And the resources that could fuel a very dynamic science and technology program that would basically focus on things like solar energy, that would put the emphasis on more people-oriented uses of information technology, that would invest in non-GMO type of organic technology. So, pwede ho lahat ito sa tingin ko, if we had the right priorities. Of course, there will be difficulties along the way, but, you know, you yourselves in UP Los Banos, agriculture, as Dr. Zamora has told me, the agricultural school here is so bereft of funds to pay decent salaries that many of our best scientists in agriculture are going off to Thailand and Southeast Asia where they're getting better rates. So this is really a problem of misallocation and a lack of political will. And it's time to turn this thing around, because 30 years of failure is 30 years of failure. Totoo mo yung sinabi nila. We used to be the second most industrialized country after Japan. Now everybody else has outstripped us. And what is the reason? It lies in government policies in political economy. So, yun lang yung sagot ko sa second question niyo. To the first, I think that we had a situation of authoritarianism under Marcos. And I think what that showed to me is that authoritarianism as a mechanism of development just does not work. Especially in a place like the Philippines, which has so many kid-oriented networks, that the idea that you can have an authoritarian state that is impartial, that is under a strong leadership that puts everything else about kinship, is possible. Well, I think nag-test tayo niyan. I really think that the Marcos period, people said that South Korea and the Philippines had similar authoritarian regimes. I beg to disagree. The problem with the Philippines was that basically you had a central bureaucratic system that was corrupted heavily, especially by friendship and crony capitalism. And South Korea had a fairly strong state that was able to, in fact, be above the play of interests of a very weak civil society elite. Now, yes, we've had 30 years here of the EDSA Republic. And I think the problem here is not less democracy is necessary, but I think more democracy is necessary. I think what we really need here is move to real participatory democracy. And this can only be done by the constant mobilization of the lower classes and the middle classes and the marginalized classes of society, and the institutionalization of this kind of participation. I think what we missed during the EDSA revolution was we, in fact, loosened our watchfulness and allowed the old practices of pre-Marcos and Marcos political practice to come back, instead of being vigilant and making sure that we move from that kind of threatened return of elite democracy to a more participatory, permanently mobilized democracy. And I think that is the way to go at this point in time. A people that does not guard against the way that the upper classes can usurp democracy and convert democracy into a play between elites we cannot have that repeated again. And we really need to look 30 years after the ex-republic, to look at ourselves and say, let us not stay put, let us not go back to false dreams of authoritarianism, let's move forward to real people's control. Now, whatever you call this people's control, si Bernie Sanders in the United States calls it democratic socialism, well, why not? If what we're after is popular control, both of the economy and the polity, why not call it democratic socialism? Am I a democratic socialist? Yes, I'm a democratic socialist. And I think it's time we push for socialism in this country.
All right, thank you, sir.